Knowledge is power. Bookrest.
David Goggins begins his story in Buffalo, New York in the early 1980s. From the outside, his family appeared successful. They lived in a large home in a respectable neighborhood. His father owned a roller skating rink and a bar. The family had money, cars, and the appearance of stability. But inside the house, life was dominated by fear and violence. David's father was abusive, controlling, and unpredictable. Physical beatings were common. Emotional intimidation was constant. David and his brother worked long hours at their father's skating rink. Even as young children, they cleaned bathrooms, handled equipment, and stayed up late into the night. This environment created chronic stress. David describes how he rarely felt safe. His nervous system was constantly activated. He learned early that no one would intervene on his behalf. Teachers, neighbors, and even police officers saw only the outward appearance of success. They did not see what happened inside the home. Because David worked late nights and lived under stress, he struggled academically. He often fell asleep in class. He could not focus. He had difficulty reading and retaining information. Rather than identifying trauma as the source of his learning difficulties, teachers labeled him slow. That label began shaping his identity. At a young age, he internalized the belief that he was unintelligent. Eventually, after years of abuse, David's mother made the decision to leave his father. The departure was not simple. She had little financial independence and limited support. The family fled Buffalo and relocated to Indiana. Although they escaped physical violence, they entered poverty. They moved into a small apartment and relied on welfare support. Financial instability replaced physical danger, but stress remained a constant presence. In Indiana, David had to repeat second grade because he was academically behind. This experience reinforced his sense of inadequacy. However, during this time, one teacher played a critical role. She believed in repetition and structure. Instead of labeling David, she worked with him patiently. Under her guidance, he began to improve his reading ability. This period demonstrated an important theme in the book. Environment matters. Expectations matter. When someone believed in him and demanded effort, he responded. But this progress was not prominent. In third grade, a different teacher suggested that David belonged in special education. The implication was clear. He was fundamentally limited. Shortly after this, he developed a stutter. His anxiety increased. He became self-conscious and withdrawn. David later explains that he was experiencing the long-term effects of toxic stress. Chronic childhood trauma can alter cognitive development, memory retention, and emotional regulation. At the time, however, he did not understand this scientifically. He only felt inferior. To cope with academic insecurity, he began cheating. He copied homework and found ways to manipulate tests. His grades improved, but his confidence did not. He knew internally that he was avoiding the real problem. This pattern, avoiding discomfort rather than confronting weakness, would repeat throughout his early life. During this period, another major trauma occurred. His mother formed a relationship with a man named Wilmoth, who provided stability and safety. For the first time, David experienced something resembling a healthy male role model. However, Wilmoth was later murdered in a violent shooting. This event added another layer of unresolved trauma. David was still an adolescent. He had not processed his earlier abuse, and now he faced sudden loss. He describes feeling emotionally numb. In addition, he recalls witnessing a tragic accident involving a child who was killed by a school bus. That image stayed with him. Combined with his existing trauma, it deepened his sense that life was unstable and unpredictable. By adolescence, David had experienced domestic abuse, chronic stress, academic labeling, poverty, murder of a father figure, exposure to sudden death. These experiences shaped his early identity. He did not see himself as capable or intelligent. He saw himself as surviving. Basketball became an outlet. It gave him temporary confidence and belonging, but academically he continued cheating and avoiding weaknesses. The central issue was not lack of intelligence, it was lack of belief and lack of disciplined confrontation with his weaknesses. This concludes the first major phase of the book. Childhood trauma created insecurity. Insecurity created avoidance. Avoidance created fragile confidence. The transformation had not yet begun. After high school, David Goggins did not immediately become disciplined or focused. He drifted. He joined the United States Air Force with the goal of becoming a pararescueman, PJ, one of the most elite rescue units in the military. However, during training, he was diagnosed with sickle cell trait. Because of concerns about potential medical complications under extreme conditions, he was removed from the program. Instead of entering an elite unit, he was reassigned to pest control duty. This moment reinforced a familiar internal narrative: failure. He returned to Indiana and began working full-time spraying for cockroaches in restaurants and apartment complexes. The work was monotonous and uninspiring. Without direction, without discipline, and without confronting his insecurities, he gained weight. A lot of weight. He reached nearly 300 pounds. He describes himself during this time as angry, dissatisfied, and deeply insecure. He blamed circumstances. He blamed his past. He blamed genetics. He blamed others. But he did not yet blame himself. This is a critical stage in the book. For years, David had survived trauma, but survival is not growth. Survival maintains existence. It does not build strength. One night, while flipping through television channels, he watched a documentary about Navy SEAL training. He saw men enduring extreme physical suffering voluntarily: cold water, sleep deprivation, continuous physical punishment. Instead of seeing impossibility, he saw contrast. He compared those men to himself. And for the first time, he asked a different question. Not, why is my life like this, but why am I allowing myself to live like this? This was the beginning of accountability. He realized something uncomfortable. His childhood explained his struggles. It did not excuse his current condition. That night, he stood in front of a mirror. He did not use motivational language. He did not reassure himself. He told himself the truth. He was overweight. He was undisciplined. He was avoiding effort. He was hiding behind his past. He later calls this practice the accountability mirror. He began writing his weaknesses on sticky notes and placing them on the mirror. Overweight, lazy, afraid, unfocused. Every morning he read them, not to shame himself, but to remove denial. This is one of the central philosophies of the book. You cannot fix what you refuse to confront. At that time, becoming a Navy SEAL required passing strict physical tests. He had less than 3 months before the cutoff deadline. To qualify, he needed to lose nearly 100 pounds, pass a swim test, perform pull-ups, push-ups, and sit-ups at high standards, complete a 1.5-mile run within required time. Doctors advised against rapid weight loss. They warned him about risks. He proceeded anyway. This phase of his life was not glamorous. He reduced his calorie intake drastically. He exercised multiple times per day. He ran despite joint pain. He trained while exhausted. He describes this period not as inspiration, but as negotiation with pain. Each day, his mind would say, "This is enough." He began noticing something important. His body was capable of more than his mind allowed. This insight later became known as the 40% rule. The 40% rule suggests that when you feel you have reached your limit, you are likely only operating at approximately 40% of your true potential. The brain, seeking comfort and safety, creates an artificial stopping point long before true exhaustion occurs. By pushing beyond early discomfort, he discovered deeper reserves. Within 3 months, he lost nearly 100 pounds. He qualified physically, but physical preparation was only the beginning. He entered Navy SEAL training. Bud's training, the breaking point. Basic underwater demolition/SEAL training is designed to eliminate candidates. The most famous phase is Hell Week. Hell Week consists of 5.5 days, nearly constant physical activity, minimal sleep, approximately 4 hours total, continuous exposure to cold water, log carries, boat carries, timed runs, surf immersion. Candidates are constantly tested physically and psychologically. David did not succeed immediately. He failed his first attempt due to injury. He returned. He failed again. Most candidates who fail once do not return. He returned a third time. This repetition is important. Earlier in life, when confronted with difficulty, David avoided weakness by cheating or withdrawing. Now he confronted it directly. During Hell Week, candidates are encouraged to quit. There is a bell in the training area. If a candidate rings the bell 3 times, he is removed from training. Many candidates quit. David did not. Even when injured, even when cold, even when exhausted. He began redefining his relationship with suffering. Previously, pain was something inflicted upon him. Now, pain was chosen. This distinction matters. When pain is imposed without control, it creates trauma. When pain is voluntarily endured for growth, it builds resilience. During training, he internalized the idea that discomfort is not a signal to stop. It is information. He completed Hell Week. Eventually, after multiple attempts and medical setbacks, he became a Navy SEAL. But transformation did not end there, because achievement alone does not permanently eliminate insecurity. Discipline must be maintained. The psychological shift. After becoming a SEAL, David could have stabilized. He had proven himself. He had achieved something elite. He could have become comfortable. Instead, he recognized another danger. Success can become a new form of comfort. He noticed that many people, after achieving one goal, settle. They identify with the achievement. They protect it. They stop pushing. He did not want to stop. He began deliberately seeking new challenges. This is where the philosophy of callousing the mind emerges. Just as hands develop calluses from repeated friction, the mind develops resilience through repeated exposure to discomfort. Avoidance creates fragility. Exposure creates strength. He began running long distances, then ultramarathons, then extreme endurance events. Not because he enjoyed them, but because they revealed mental weakness, and he believed weakness must be exposed to be removed. After becoming a Navy SEAL, David Goggins had already proven something significant. He had lost nearly 100 pounds. He had completed one of the toughest military trainings in the world. He had pushed through multiple failures. At this point, many people would stabilize. They would maintain their achievement. They would protect their status. But Goggins noticed a pattern, both in others and in himself. Achievement can become comfort, and comfort is subtle. You begin telling yourself, I've done enough. I've proven myself. I deserve rest. He believed that mindset slowly weakens discipline. So instead of settling, he escalated. Enter ultra-endurance. The turning point into ultra-endurance happened unexpectedly. In 2005, a group of Navy SEALs were killed in Afghanistan during Operation Red Wings. Their families needed financial support. Goggins decided to raise money for the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. The fastest way he believed he could do that was by entering ultra-endurance races to gain attention and donations. There was one problem. He had never run a marathon. He entered a 100-mile race. The event was called the San Diego One Day, a 24-hour endurance event on a 1-mile track. The goal was to run as many miles as possible within 24 hours. He had almost no formal training. The result was extreme physical collapse. After around 70 miles, his body began shutting down. His feet were broken. His kidneys began failing. He was urinating blood. Medical staff advised him to stop. He continued. He completed 101 miles in under 19 hours. This was not a display of intelligent preparation. It was a display of raw will. Later, he admitted he approached that race recklessly, but he also discovered something critical. His perceived limits were inaccurate. He learned that pain is layered. When you push past initial suffering, a second layer appears, then a third, then another. Most people never discover deeper layers because they quit at the first one. Learning from mistakes. Unlike earlier in his life where he avoided weaknesses through cheating, Goggins now began analyzing his failures carefully. He recognized he had undertrained, he had neglected proper preparation, he relied too much on raw toughness. So he adjusted. He began structured training, long-distance runs, slow, consistent mileage, better planning. This marked an evolution from reckless toughness to disciplined endurance. He entered more races, Badwater 135, 135 miles through Death Valley heat, multiple 100-mile trail races, 24-hour endurance competitions. Each race exposed something new. Physical breakdown, sleep deprivation hallucinations, electrolyte imbalance, severe joint damage. But instead of interpreting pain as danger alone, he interpreted it as feedback. Pain became a diagnostic tool. The cookie jar. During these extreme events, he developed a psychological strategy known as the cookie jar. The cookie jar is simple in theory. Whenever he faced overwhelming difficulty, he mentally recalled previous victories, moments when he endured Hell Week, his 100-pound weight loss, previous races, and surviving childhood abuse. These memories became psychological evidence that he could survive. Instead of saying, "This is impossible," he said, "I have done hard things before." The cookie jar is not about ego, it is about data. You collect proof of resilience, and when doubt appears, you reference that proof. This strategy helped him during moments where quitting seemed logical. Ranger School. Repeated failure. Even after becoming a SEAL and endurance athlete, Goggins sought further military challenge. He pursued Army Ranger School, one of the most difficult leadership courses in the U.S. military. Ranger School includes severe sleep deprivation, continuous physical movement, leadership evaluation under stress, and field survival conditions. He did not pass easily. He failed multiple times. Earlier in life, repeated failure would have reinforced insecurity. Now, failure became refinement. He asked, "What weakness did this reveal?" Not, "Why am I not good enough?" This shift is subtle but powerful. Failure stopped being identity. It became information. Eventually, he completed Ranger School. He later became one of the few individuals to complete Navy SEAL training, Army Ranger School, and Air Force Tactical Air Controller training. Taking souls. In competition, Goggins developed another concept, taking souls. This phrase does not refer to cruelty, it refers to psychological dominance through effort. For example, if two runners are suffering equally, but one appears calm and controlled, the other begins doubting himself. Goggins would intentionally maintain composure during extreme suffering, not to impress others, but to destabilize them. This strategy highlights an important psychological truth. Humans compare constantly. When you demonstrate resilience publicly, it influences others' perception of their own limits. Confronting racism. Throughout his military career, Goggins also faced racism and discrimination. He describes moments where he was doubted, isolated, or stereotyped. Earlier in life, he would have internalized these experiences as confirmation of inadequacy. Now he reframed them. He viewed discrimination as another obstacle to outwork. He decided that competence would be his response. Not argument, not complaint, but performance. This mindset is controversial to some, but in his framework, control was central. He focused only on what he could influence: effort, preparation, skill, and endurance. External bias became background noise. Injury and refusal to quit. As years passed, his body accumulated damage: stress fractures, shin splints, knee injuries, broken feet. He often trained through injury. This approach was extreme and sometimes medically questionable, but psychologically it reinforced his philosophy. The mind must not surrender to early discomfort. However, he later acknowledged that intelligent training matters. Discipline must be paired with strategy. Blind suffering without learning is not growth. It is repetition. Evolution of identity. By this stage, David Goggins was no longer the insecure child who cheated on tests. He had built something different. But he did not describe himself as confident. He described himself as accountable. There is a distinction. Confidence can fluctuate. Accountability remains consistent. Accountability means you do not negotiate with your goals. You confront weakness directly. You accept responsibility for outcomes. He continued setting new goals not because he enjoyed pain, but because challenge prevented stagnation. Core themes emerging. By the end of this phase of his life, several themes solidify. Pain is not the enemy, avoidance is. Failure is not identity, it is data. The mind quits before the body. Discipline must replace motivation. Your past explains you, it does not define you. Goggins does not claim that trauma disappears. He acknowledges that childhood abuse left permanent marks, but he argues that scars do not eliminate agency. You may not control your beginning, you control your response. By the time David Goggins had completed Navy SEAL training, Army Ranger School, multiple ultra-endurance races, and years of self-imposed physical hardship, he had fundamentally transformed his identity. But transformation did not come without cost. His body had accumulated damage: stress fractures, knee deterioration, chronic joint pain, hormonal imbalance from extreme training, long-term physical wear. The book does not romanticize this. Goggins acknowledges that pushing limits recklessly can cause damage. Early in his endurance career, he trained without proper recovery or planning. Over time, he learned that discipline must evolve. True discipline is not constant destruction, it is intelligent pressure. The full meaning of the 40% rule. Earlier, we introduced the 40% rule. In the final chapters, Goggins clarifies its deeper meaning. The rule does not mean ignore medical emergencies. It does not mean disregard permanent injury. It means this: the brain's first signal to stop is usually psychological discomfort, not actual physical failure. Humans are wired for safety. Safety prefers comfort. Comfort resists growth. When effort becomes uncomfortable, the brain creates convincing reasons to stop. I'm tired. This is enough. I deserve rest. This is too hard. But most of the time, those signals appear far before true capacity is reached. The 40% rule is about awareness. It asks, are you truly at your limit, or are you responding to discomfort? This principle applies beyond physical training, in business, in academics, in relationships, in skill development. Most people never discover their true capability because they accept early resistance as final limitation. The danger of comfort. One of the strongest recurring themes in the book is the danger of comfort. Goggins argues that modern environments promote ease, immediate entertainment, food abundance, digital distraction, and emotional validation. These reduce friction, and friction builds strength. Without friction, resilience declines. He describes how people often create stories to protect comfort. I'm just not good at that. That's not for me. I'm too busy. I don't have time. In his view, these are often avoidance mechanisms. He believes growth requires deliberate discomfort. Cold showers, difficult conversations, early mornings, hard training, learning new skills despite embarrassment. Discomfort exposes weakness. Exposure allows correction. Taking responsibility for the narrative. Another major concept in the final section of the book is ownership of narrative. For years, Goggins could have built his identity entirely around his trauma. Abuse survivor, victim of poverty, victim of racism, victim of educational neglect. Each label would have been accurate, but he chose not to center his identity on victimhood. He does not deny injustice, he denies surrender. This distinction is important. Acknowledging adversity is different from surrendering to it. He reframes past suffering as raw material, material that, when processed correctly, becomes strength. Evolution of discipline. As his career progressed, Goggins refined his training philosophy. Early on, he relied heavily on brute force. Later, he incorporated structured recovery, flexibility training, yoga for mobility, and strategic periodization. He realized that discipline must be sustainable. Breaking the body repeatedly without adaptation limits longevity. True resilience is not reckless, it is consistent. He shifted from proving toughness to mastering self-control. Emotional control. Another subtle but significant evolution in the book is emotional regulation. In childhood, emotions controlled him: fear, anger, shame. In adulthood, he practiced emotional neutrality under stress. During races, when hallucinating from exhaustion, he did not panic. During criticism, he did not react impulsively. This was not suppression, it was conditioning. Repeated exposure to stress reduces emotional volatility. The nervous system adapts. Just as muscles adapt to weight, emotions adapt to challenge. The role of reflection. Throughout the book, each chapter ends with a challenge. These are reflective exercises. They encourage readers to identify limiting beliefs, write down weaknesses, analyze failures, confront insecurities, and set uncomfortable goals. This reinforces a major point. Change is active. Reading inspiration is passive. Writing truth is active. Acting on it is transformative. Goggins emphasizes journaling and self-assessment. He argues that without written clarity, goals remain vague. Vague goals create vague effort. Specific weaknesses require specific correction. Relationships and isolation. The book also acknowledges that extreme self-discipline can affect relationships. Goggins' pursuit of excellence required isolation, long training hours, emotional intensity, relentless schedule. This lifestyle does not easily align with balance. He does not present himself as emotionally soft or relationally focused. Instead, he frames his life as mission-driven. This raises a larger philosophical question. What are you willing to sacrifice for mastery? He does not answer this universally. He simply presents his own choices. Final philosophy. By the end of the book, the central philosophy becomes clear. You are not responsible for the events that shaped your childhood. You are responsible for the adult you become. You may carry scars. You may carry trauma. You may carry disadvantages, but you also carry agency. Agency requires radical honesty, daily discipline, willing exposure to discomfort, and a refusal to negotiate with weakness. He does not promise ease. He does not promise happiness. He promises growth. And growth in his framework is built through friction. The core lessons of Can't Hurt Me. Summarized neutrally, the book teaches trauma influences you but does not permanently define you. Self-deception is the primary obstacle to growth. The mind's perceived limits are often artificial. Discipline is stronger than motivation. Discomfort is a training tool. Failure provides data, not identity. Reflection and accountability create lasting change. Comfort gradually weakens resilience. Growth requires voluntary exposure to difficulty. Your story is raw material, not destiny. Closing perspective. Can't Hurt Me is not a traditional self-help book. It is not centered around positivity. It does not focus on balance. It does not emphasize emotional reassurance. It focuses on mental ownership. The title itself implies external circumstances may influence you, but they do not have to control you. The ultimate shift in David Goggins' life was not physical, it was cognitive. He moved from, "Why did this happen to me?" to, "What am I going to do about it?" That question defines the book.